On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
the celebrated songwriting team Kooman and Dimond, Michael Kooman and Christopher Dimond. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood. Last night, I fell asleep listening to the world premiere recording of The Noteworthy Life of Howard Barnes. I listened to it like 5 times last night, and every time it finished, I just started it up again, and y'all, I had the weirdest dreams, which sort of fits into the theme of The Noteworthy Life of Howard Barnes. Howard is a guy who hates musicals and wakes up one morning to find out that his life is a musical. He's confused, he's annoyed, and slowly he is indoctrinated into the cult of musical theater by way of a love story that is the stuff of Broadway lore. I have not seen this show on stage yet. It played at the Village Theater in Seattle after being developed by the National Association of Musical Theater and the prestigious Eugene O'Neill National Theater Conference, but I have no doubt that this will be performed at theaters all over the country because it is smart, it is funny, it is accessible for musical theater nerds and the people who aren't so sure they love musicals. Michael Kooman and Christopher Dimond are a songwriting team with a remarkable resume, having won the Fred Ebb Award and the Jonathan Larson Grant, and they're the songwriters for Disney Junior's Vampirina, a series for which they've written over 150 songs. I'm so thrilled to have these veteran songwriters on the show. Welcome, Kooman and Dimond, to Laura Heywood Interviews.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for having us.
Congratulations on this remarkable album.
Thank you. We're super excited about it.
I was so impressed by it. I feel like we're in an age where, with a computer and an instrument or two, basically anybody can make an album. And so sometimes I go in with like low ideas of what, like low standards. Not low standards, but like I get sent a lot of albums and people are like, I wrote my first musical or I wrote a musical. And I'm like, here we go. Like, I'm so excited for people to be practicing and to be beginners. I'm a big proponent of the fact that being new at something is not the same as being bad at it. But I get sent a lot of work by people who are new. And I should never have hesitated because you guys are not at all new at this. And this album just feels like it could be from a show that's been running on Broadway for 15 years.
Thank you. What a compliment. I really, really appreciate that. And you're right. It's like it's one thing to write musical theater, or it's one thing to write songs. It's a completely different thing to like produce an album or produce a song. And I will say like that's where our sort of like our television job that we've been doing for the last 3 years has sort of like come in handy because we've had to write and produce 150 songs for Vampirina.
So you're producing them as well as writing them?
Exactly,
Impressive.
Which is a totally different songwriting ability or music ability. And then we sort of like when we did this show in Seattle, we were like, oh, we really should capture this because we just love these performances. But it really came in handy as we were producing this album because, part of that, like the art of that is like knowing what you can fix in post-production and what you can't fix, and then knowing how to record it. Like, do we record the orchestra first? Do we record the background vocals second and then the lead vocals? So it's sort of like the art of production is such a different thing, but we were so happy to be able to bring that back into like our theater roots, which is really where our heart is. It's where we got our start anyway. So thank you though. That's a great compliment. Thank you.
I don't say things that aren't true. And I don't say things that haven't been earned. What I would like to do is we rarely get to play music on this show because because DNR Studios is a small operation and you got to pay the BMI and ASCAP. That's very inside. But like in order to play music on the radio, that's why a lot of podcasts don't have music. But there's an exception to be made when the people who are on, or people who own both the songwriting and the publishing, give permission. And you guys, I understand, own the publishing and the songwriting for these songs. And so I would love to share a little bit with the audience. And I think, to quote the show, we should start at the beginning, which is a very good place to begin. Thank you for the nod to a musical theater classic, and also for not going exactly because Howard would not know to say a very good place to start. He just happens to say the beginning is a very good place to begin, and that, as a musical theater nerd, tickled my funny bone in a major way. Anything you want to say about Welcome to Today before we hear it?
Well, I think this is the show's opening number. So we've seen at this point a brief scene. The show actually opens with a book scene, ironically, where we sort of set up Howard's everyday life, and then as Howard goes to bed, we find that magically his bed starts to tilt upright until it's standing vertical, in another slight nod to a musical. And we hear music for the first time, and a voiceover comes in, and he wakes up to find that his life has suddenly changed in a very drastic and dramatic way.
So let's listen to that song and set up the story of the noteworthy life of Howard Barnes.
Howard Barnes was a curious case, though in many ways he seemed to be a perfectly average American male. He liked organized sports and grilling things and the movies of Steve Martin. But beneath the surface, Howard was in crisis. For, like too many men of his generation, Howard Barnes had forgotten how to feel. And so, Howard closed himself off and drifted through life, numb to the wonders of the world around him. That is, until the day a higher power intervened.
Ah! What in the world?
Hey there, Howard!
Good Lord!
Oh, isn't it a beautiful morning?
How did you get in here?
Well, never mind that. Take a look outside. There's a big, bright, beautiful world out there. Have you seen a more perfect morning?
Oh my God!
Wonders waiting to be unfurled.
Are you, singing?
Joy that hits you without a warning. Once you open your heart up to the world.
What the hell is happening?
Howard, all of the birds are tweeting as the butterflies flutter by.
Please stop.
They are sending their warmest greeting. See the rainbow embrace the clear blue sky. See the bumblebee zipping, zooming. I think I know what their buzzing means. They say look at the blossoms blooming on both of the trees that grow in Queens. Howard, the dawn is breaking. Watch as the darkness fades to gray. There is a new world waiting to say, welcome to today.
This cannot be happening.
Hear the heart of the city beating, keeping time for the human race. Take a look at that fat guy eating, shoving bacon into his fat guy face.
Homeless people who haven't showered since the summer of '92. What a beautiful morning, Howard. None of them have exposed themselves to you.
Howard, the day's beginning. The sun has arrived, it's here to stay. Howard, the world is grinning, giddy and gay. Welcome to today.
Any minute now, I'll be waking up and all of this will have just been a...
Howard, anything can happen. Howard, on this magical day. Howard,
Don't just sit there napping. Carpe diem, the diem away.
now you're cruising beneath Manhattan. Oh, what wonders may come to be.
There's a chance that the seat you sat in wasn't covered in semen, blood, or pee.
Howard, your life is starting.
Don't miss the chance to seize the day.
Sorrow is sweetly parting. Howard, hey, welcome to today. Is tomorrow's yesterday, but when today is tomorrow, it's tomorrow's today. You cannot waste today on tomorrow's today or on yesterday's tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. What a brilliant, like, classic musical theater song with a whole new modern take. Like, I love it. It sounds like the kind of music I grew up listening to.
Totally. Yeah, part of our concept with that opening number is to like write our spin on like what you think a musical theater song sounds like, if that makes sense. Like, it's a little bit Hairspray, it's a little bit Avenue Q, but like we're dialed up to 11, right? Because our main character is really annoyed by it, obviously. So it's sort of a little purposefully annoying, but obviously we also want it to be a good song too.
Right. There's a word that I can't quite come up with that means kind of that. I think it's like, it's archetypal a little bit. You know, we think now we have all these beautiful musicals that are not necessarily so traditional, like Hamilton, like Hadestown, that use music we don't necessarily even as going back as far as Rent, musicals that don't use the kind of songs that our grandparents thought of as musical theater songs. What this reminds me of the most, I think, is like Something Rotten, which is a love letter to musicals in a world where musicals are not appreciated or known. And so I think you accomplished the same thing that show, which was such a huge hit, has done.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, you know, when Michael and I were setting out to write this, one of the things we were most excited by about it was that ability to pay homage to the musicals that we love and all these great traditions of musical theater, but also simultaneously to get to poke fun at some of the conventions that we find a little silly at times. So it's been a really, really fun musical to work on.
How did it come to you? Was one of you like, I have an idea? I remember when I took creative writing classes that the one rule was, you never start with somebody waking up. And that was, we actually did an exercise where we all wrote a story starting with somebody who woke up, like they woke up. The other rule was it can never just have all been a dream. And then we crumpled them up as a class in mass. We crumpled them up and we're like, that's the last time we'll ever start with somebody waking up. But you guys accomplished this so well.
Thank you. Yeah, we had written a couple of musicals together before, and we're just brainstorming ideas for something new. The first couple of musicals that we wrote together were a little darker, shall we say, and things that were kind of edgier and a little more experimental in terms of their subject matter than most classical musicals are. So we were really looking for something that would immediately grab people and that the hook of would be something that people would be immediately into. So as Michael and I were discussing it, you know, we kind of pitched back and forth a number of ideas, and somehow we settled on this idea of a man who wakes up to discover that his life is a musical. And as we really liked the germ of that idea, but we knew that it needed to be more than that. And as we dug into it, the more we got into the meat of what that actually meant, the more interesting it became to us and the more possibilities we saw for it.
It also sort of reminds me of title of show. You know, this meta idea of the musical itself being referenced in the musical. It also is not at all like a rehashing or a copying of that idea. It's not so much the story of how did title of show say it? It was a musical that told the story of its own creation, or two guys writing a musical about two guys writing a musical about two guys writing a musical. In this case, the musical is the environment. But in the same way, unlike most shows, the musical is acknowledged by the actors or the characters on stage.
Totally. One of the things that we really wanted to do was find the story beneath the story. We felt like it just like a musical about a guy who wakes up one day to write to find himself in a musical wasn't enough to sustain an entire show.
Yeah, that's like a sketch.
Exactly. But it was more important for us to figure out why and then to develop that reason. But also because we felt it would be more appealing to broad audiences. Like, we didn't just want to write this show for musical theater fans. You know, there's a bunch of like Easter eggs in this show that you'll get if you know and love musicals. But ultimately, you know, if you hate musicals, this is also a musical for you, because the main character of the musical hates musicals and doesn't know anything about them and is learning both to love and also kind of make fun of musicals throughout the show. So it was really important for us to sort of write this for a different kind of audience than just musical theater fans, but also obviously write it as a love letter to musical theater fans.
It's I mean, I feel like we have 45 minutes, and I want to talk about. I mean, I feel like it's so easy to describe this show that I don't even know like exactly the questions to ask. But I guess one thing I'm curious about is how writing a show like this is different from what you guys are usually doing. So you're creating a world from scratch as opposed to like Vampirina. And I'd love to hear about, first of all, how that came about, and also what your regular process is for creating those songs. You're not writing the scripts for those episodes, right? So somebody's saying, here's the script and here are the moments we want songs.
Correct. Yeah, the way it works with that process is that we receive the script that the writing team has written, usually when it's in its second draft form, and they will highlight a moment in the script and say, here's where the original song goes, where Vampirina sings about whatever she's singing about in that particular episode. So a lot of the work is done for us in that case, in a way, because we know what the song is about. We know the work that it's going to do. Whereas when we're working on an original musical, we're carving all that out for ourselves from scratch. So the way our process works in that way is typically if we're writing the show ourselves and writing the book, music, and lyrics without an additional collaborator, we spend a lot of time early in the process just brainstorming and outlining and talking about what the story is and what's most interesting to us and where we think it can go. And then we kind of launch into the process of writing a draft of the script, writing the script and laying out the story without too much thought about where the songs are going to go, so that we make sure we've got the foundation, we've got the underlying structure down and in a place where we're feeling good about it. And then we sit down together and we just start hashing out where we think the songs fall in that story and what chunks of scenes we think can be taken up by song and how musicalizing things will change and shape the story.
So you write the story together? Because the way you're credited, I think, is one person on music and the other on book and lyrics. But there's got to be collaboration in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about collaboration is that like sometimes you just forget what part you play sometimes, because like it's just so much of a conversation. I mean, that is the gift of like being able to work with someone all the time, is that you're constantly having this feedback. He has an idea and I'm like, that's cool, but what if we shift it a little bit in this direction? And then suddenly that becomes a completely different direction for the show. So like, yeah, we're constantly going back and forth where, you know, for example, like when we started writing, we used to never write in the same room, which was just partly scary for us. It's a very vulnerable experience to write.
Wait, does not doing it in the same room mean that like you were in adjoining rooms, or does it mean like one of you that you were each working from home, that you were working on opposite coasts? Like, how close were you actually?
Any of those options, honestly. It was more so the fact that we, you know, to create a piece of music personally is like so vulnerable, because you're just like, oh my gosh, I like this, but I don't know if it's a good piece. I'll record it on an MP3 and then send it to him. That's how we used to work. But we eventually figured out that the most effective way for us to work was to really be in the same room and to like play off each other's ideas and be able to give feedback, but also take feedback and adjust on a moment-to-moment basis. You know, just for example, on a song, I'll come up with a piece of music, maybe a chorus, and then he'll be like, that's awesome, but I feel like I don't have enough syllables to express the idea that I need. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can give you 2 more syllables in this line and then 2 more syllables in this line. But this last line, I really think this last line needs to be just 3 syllables, you know? And it's just that back and forth that is so much easier in the same room. But the same kind of thing for a whole musical. It's like, okay, I love the idea of this guy being stuck in a musical, but like why? Like, why has he been chosen? Why is this happening? Like, why can't he get out? And how does he feel about that? And what kind of like barriers is he coming across? Who's helping him? You know, all of these things we sort of hash out together in a room. And that really, that's taking collaboration to its best end. If you know what I mean. I would feel bad if I wrote book, music, and lyrics all by myself, because not only would it be lonely, but I feel like you don't have that immediate back and forth of like, is this a good idea? Should I go down this road? Should I even write this musical? Is this a good song? All of those things are things that are a little bit easier to answer in a collaboration. But even still, like, musicals take a long time, and even sometimes you write a song or a scene and you're like, I think this is amazing, and then you get into a workshop and you're reading, you're like, wow, this song is stopping the show, and not in a good way. Like, this song is just too slow for this moment. This song is not right for this character. This song feels weird. Like, why is this character even singing? Like, there's so many problems that you can discover when you're writing a musical that you just don't even discover until it's up on its feet, whether it's a reading or a workshop, or especially in a full production. For example, there's a song on this album called Shoot the Puck. It's the second song. And we were like a week away from opening, and we got a message from the production department. They were like, we need 30 seconds longer to do this transition. There's a huge scene change happening behind, like, the sort of, it's all happening sort of in the first third part of the stage, right? Forgive me for not knowing the technical. What is the technical term?
It's happening in one.
It's happening in one.
Oh, I didn't know that term either. That means it's the front third of the stage, like the.
Well, it's happening in front of
the
downstage
curtain.
of the curtain, basically. Beyond the proscenium.
In one. I thought in one meant like we're back in one. Like when your TV show goes to commercial and they're like, "This is us. We'll return in 1 minute." I think of that as, or like when the stage manager goes, "This is your 1 minute," and you go, "Thank you, one."
Thank you, one. Yeah, so we had this thing going on where it was happening in one, but we were told that, like, the actual physical demands of this moment, we needed 30 extra seconds, which is, like, hard to do. Like, because we don't just want to write like a random 30 seconds.
Or just vamping.
It, you know what I mean? So we actually had to figure out something to happen in front of the curtain that took at least 30 seconds. So we created this, like, moment where the chorus is just sort of, like, narrating what Howard's doing. They're like, and now he's walking down the street. sort of like that old Randy Newman. There's, like, what's that show?
Family Guy.
Family Guy. There's, like, a scene where Randy Newman is, like, at the piano and he's, like, narrating what he sees, and it's kind of making fun of that. We were like, wouldn't it be funny if we do that, but, like, the musical theater version of it, where they're, like, snapping their hands, and so we did that, and that ended up being, like, a really fun moment. These are all things, all going back to your question of, like, it's great to play off each other in the same room. It's great to figure out the problems together and tackle them together, whether it's in the room, in a workshop, or in sort of a production setting.
Chris, can you take me back to how you guys found each other? How do two people become songwriting partners?
Absolutely. Michael and I were very fortunate in that we met fairly early in our journey as writers. We were both students at Carnegie Mellon University. I was in the graduate playwriting program, and Michael was an undergraduate composition major. And we took a class together. We took a lyric writing class together, and didn't speak to each other for the entire semester. We sort of sat on opposite sides of the room and
like,
admired
you didn't like each other,
from
or
afar.
just it was a big class, or what?
Chris is a very introverted person, and it was just so scary to go up. He has such confidence that it was just really difficult to approach such a man. I'm teasing you.
Entirely lying. That's not what happened at all. No, we were just, we didn't know each other at all. It was a bit of an awkward situation when you're writing that closely. And most of the people in the room were playwriting students. Michael was one of the few people who wasn't a playwright who was in that class. So
you weren't actively avoiding each other.
No,
you just
there
didn't
was no
to
animosity.
Correct.
We just never had occasion to speak. But we admired each other's work from afar throughout the semester. And then toward the end of that semester, the undergraduate performance majors were looking to raise money for their showcase trip, and so they asked Michael if he would write some songs for them so that they could record an album in order to sell it and do some concerts around it to
What an
make money.
honor.
And there was a very tight time deadline on it, and so Michael asked me if I would be interested in collaborating on a few songs. And so we sat down together and we had a meeting and kind of kicked around some ideas for songs that we had, and found that we had a similarly twisted sense of humor, which was one of our first points of connection, and wrote those songs and got along really well, and kind of just continued writing from there.
I feel like this is the songwriter's equivalent of, like, marrying your college sweetheart. That there are people who search their whole lives and don't find love. And then there are people who, like, marry the person who was next door to them in their freshman dorm because just the chemistry was there and it all worked out.
Exactly. We're on our platinum anniversary right now. No,
Isn't that like 75 years or something?
It feels like 75 years. Let me tell you what. No, but it's great. I mean, because like, I would say we have similar senses of humor, but also we just have like a similar view on theater. You know what I mean? Like it's important that you just kind of have a generally same view of theater, but also, you know, I have to like sit in a room with him for 8 hours every day. So it's both like a work thing, but also like a personality thing. You know, you kind of, it is a relationship in a sort.
Do you have the same kinds of conflicts that you know, spouses or long-term relationships have? Are there times when you're just like, I need to not be around you right now?
Yeah,
definitely.
I think in a lot of ways there are very similar parallels between a romantic relationship and a writing collaboration. You know, it's you come up against some of the same conflicts. You're spending a lot of time together. You're creating something together. You're responsible for the nurturing and upbringing of this thing. So you have to really navigate a lot of the issues that come up as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially this album, because like this was our own thing. This was our baby. Like we didn't have a schedule or a deadline to be on. You know, this was our thing entirely. So we had to schedule everything. We had to mix and master everything. We worked with an audio mixer, but we had to pick every take. We had to stay on our own schedule. So I mean, it's not only the artistic thing, but we also had to sort of balance the business side of thing, and then we're also trying to balance the work level between us. And so it's definitely like it's a lot of communication. Like, hey, I think you should do this. Are you okay with doing this right now? You know what I mean? It's a relationship too. But I mean, I'm glad we have a good one. We've been through a lot. So.
I like that you you go into this relationship knowing what your strengths are, and I think that that's something that I see a lot of couples struggle with in the romantic world, is sort of who's going to be in charge of like packing the kids' lunches or whatever, you know, and to be able to at least have a sort of balance of the workload, at least to a certain degree, seems like it would be a relief.
Totally.
Do you have a favorite song or a favorite moment for this show, or is that like asking to choose between your children?
That's a good question. Chris, what do you think?
I have a favorite song, I would say. My favorite song is a song called Noteworthy. That occurs. It's sort of the almost in love song of the show. If you had to label it, it's a song between the two main characters, where Maggie, who is Howard's awkward love interest and becomes his guide through the world of musical theater, expresses to Howard the idea that musicals are about finding moments in life that are worth singing about, where your emotion is too great for words alone. And I think that is ultimately what this show is about for me. And so that one I think I'm particularly fond of.
Before you answer, I think we should listen to Noteworthy.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
There's a lot to sing about, really. I mean, sure, life sucks, obviously. But at the same time, there are Polaroid pictures, there's early fall weather, soft Caribbean sand, elderly couples out walking together, hand in hand. The way that the cream in your coffee just hovers till the clouds dissipate. Saturday morning spent under the covers, sleeping late. But still, I'm inclined to profess that I believe it's kind of noteworthy nonetheless. There are rad 80s movies that star Patrick Swayze, also Jennifer Grey. Old roller coasters that rattle like crazy as they sway. Late nights making s'mores by the living room fire in a winter snowstorm. Ooh, towels that you've taken straight out of the dryer, soft and warm. And maybe it's not all that special. It might seem mundane, I confess.
don't know.
Oh, come on. A sky full of stars.
Some Cuban cigars.
A summer in Prague.
An old loyal dog.
Times meant for silence when giggles attack.
The first time your dad showed you Empire Strikes Back.
Your favorite jeans.
Or pinball machines.
Newly waxed floors.
The Stones and the Doors. The Rangers, the Yankees, the Giants, the Knicks.
That moment with someone where something just clicks. There are R&B records so perfect to dance to by yourself now and then. Books on your shelf that you long for the chance to read again. The way that a moment can send your head spinning, and the way two hands fit. Voices that whisper when something's beginning. This is it. And maybe those moments are fleeting.
The case could be argued, I guess.
But I believe they're kind
So
of
maybe they're kind of
noteworthy. Nonetheless.
You're right. That is like a beautiful song in a transitional moment in the show.
Thank you.
I could see why it's your favorite.
Thanks.
That also, it takes us a little bit out of the tongue-in-cheek theme of the show, that like they're the ones that are like, hey, this is a musical in a almost spoof satire kind of way, poking fun at musicals. And then this is, it almost reminds me, you mentioned Avenue Q earlier, of like, there's a fine, fine line, which is a very sincere, beautiful song that could be sung by anyone in a musical, outside a musical. It doesn't scream satire. And I think that is what makes this show more than sort of a one-note, same joke over and over.
Totally. I think it's so important to just have contrast and balance in whatever you create as a writer. So, of course, this is mostly a funny show, hopefully. But I don't think funny is great unless it has heart behind it. And so we definitely lean into the moments of heart. And I actually think, sort of surrounded by this craziness of musical theater, that it's more, it stands out more when you lean into those heart moments, because it's sort of what's happening around it is pretty chaotic. But yeah, so we have a couple of those moments, but it is mostly a musical comedy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as was Avenue Q, there's no doubt about that. I think that there's this. So I had the choreographer Chase Brock here during Be More Chill. And there's a scene in Be More Chill where they're at the opening of Act 2, they're having a Halloween party. And he was very clear about the fact that there's a difference between when the actors are dancing and when the characters are dancing. And he choreographed it accordingly, because the actors in their choreography, when the characters are not supposed to be dancing, is very... it's like synced up there, which is it's a phrase from the show, but they're in unison in a major way. But when a bunch of drunk teenagers are partying on Halloween, it's messier, and it's, and I feel like one of the things about musicals is that, with the exception of shows like Jersey Boys and Beautiful, I mean, there are a lot of them now, I guess, the Ain't Too Proud and Tina and stuff, but when it's rare that the characters are singing. It's most of the time it's the actors who are singing, and the songs represent these moments of too much emotion, right? And I feel like you've done a really good job of, in that song in particular, it represents when maybe the characters are just expressing themselves, as opposed to the musical being like, I don't know, I'm not articulating it very well. I hope you know what I mean.
Yeah, thrust upon them. It's actually
exactly.
The moment that Howard enters that song and begins to sing in that song is really the first moment that he willingly sings in the show. One of the fun things we could play with this character who's aware of the musical happening around him is that he's a reluctant participant. So there are times when he sings that he does not want to be singing and kind of goes in and out of the frustration of being forced to sing by the greater powers at be in this musical, but at this particular moment he actually actively makes a choice to start singing. And so that's one way that we can kind of track his journey and chart his arc throughout the show, is how his relationship to music progresses as he learns to open himself up to the world.
Do you guys watch The Good Place?
Yes. I love that show.
Me too. I actually binged the first 4 seasons because somehow I'd missed it. But the way that Howard sings, especially at the beginning of the show, reminds me of how the main character, Eleanor, in The Good Place, she tries to swear, but all that comes out are like the word fork and whatever the other ones are. You know, she's trying to say something. She's trying to speak in a certain way that makes sense to her, but somehow the universe around her is forcing it to come out in a different way. And eventually she, I guess, spoiler alert, although I'm not really worried this gives anything away, she kind of like gets into it.
Yeah.
And I feel like she's no longer trying to say the actual swear. She just like says fork and likes it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a classic convention for a musical comedy, is that like sort of a fish out of water kind of concept. Someone who is in a brand new place moves into a new town or something like that, and they're learning everything, and so that's a great way to like put exposition into a story. But also for us, we were able to have him be like, why are you all dancing in the exact same way right now? You know what I mean? Like, we have this character of Howard who lets us comment on these weird things that we all accept as musical theater conventions. So again, it was just a lot of fun to play in this world. But yeah, I mean, part of like this process was figuring out where we're acknowledging the singing and where the singing comes out in sort of a genuine or effortless kind of way.
You know what it reminds me so much of is Groundhog Day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Where he is stuck. The world has always worked in a certain way, and he wakes up one morning and something major has changed that only he is really able to realize. And the trajectory of the show is getting to understand the new normal.
Absolutely.
And to appreciate it as opposed to fighting against it the whole time.
Definitely. It's certainly a similar journey, I would say.
But not in a way that seems like this is, you know, in any way derivative.
No, I think it's a classic storytelling convention.
Right. What do they say? There are only 3 stories, and we just tell them over and over again in different ways.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a favorite song from the album?
I do. I mean, bouncing off what we were just talking about, I mean, what ultimately this show is about, and I don't think it's a huge spoiler alert since the album is out, it's about a guy who learns to open himself up to emotion, and through the sort of convention of singing in musical theater, you know, singing in musical theater is an inherently emotional thing, right? When a character breaks into song, we're lifting off into an emotional place. And this is ultimately a story about a guy who has shrunken down his spectrum of emotion to be very, very small. And so ultimately he learns to find music everywhere, and
which is like he's learning how to be vulnerable.
Exactly. Which is I think an important lesson for. I think it's interesting that we wrote this show at a time when I think both of us needed to learn that lesson too. In some ways, we didn't realize it until we kind of like were in the middle of it. But the last song of the show is "Music Everywhere," where he decides to open himself up to love and to emotion, to the highs and the lows, and to make every day, so to speak, a musical, or find the music in everyday life. And so basically, through the magic of theater, he is creating this idyllic musical theater world for him and the female protagonist, Maggie. And it's sort of like what I was trying to do was find the most amount of joy I could put in this musical world. So as all of these like technical things are happening, like he's like building this musical world like when we did this at the Village Theater, we spent like 80% of the budget on the last 9 minutes of the show because he is creating the most idyllic musical theater world that he can possibly create. And then sort of like musically, I'm trying to just make it the happiest, most joyful thing I could possibly make. At the very end of the song, we have the chorus, all of them singing at the highest range of their voices. Same thing with the leads. I was just I was just inspired to try to make this the most happy, joyful musical comedy ending that I could possibly write. So.
Which is really saying something, because there have been some really joyful musical theater endings in the canon of Broadway.
Yes, and who knows if this is going to be one of them or not.
Well,
but
it I was going to say it reads like one, but it like listens like one.
Oh, great, great.
I feel like it has that messaging. I feel like I go out being like, yes, musical theater.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to listen to it?
I would love to.
Is everyone in agreement?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Can't you hear that melody? Can't you hear the song begging us to sing along? Can't you hear the music?
Howard.
Can't you hear the orchestra playing crystal clear? If we simply choose to hear, can't you hear the music?
How are you doing this?
I was deaf and dumb for all those years, till I met an ingenue who opened up my ears. Can't you see those colored lights shining brilliantly? See the way the world could be if you hear the music. We could walk out of this theater and go back to the way we've always been. Or we could go out together and make our own musical. We could sing in perfect harmony. Simply stay and say that you'll make music with me. Feel the choreography. You were meant to dance. Close your eyes and take a chance. Can't you hear the music?
I can hear the music.
I can hear the music.
Wow, Howard, that was a really sweet closing number.
Oh, I'm just getting started. Let those guitars start a squealing. Give me a totally kick-ass set. I got a beautiful feeling that the show we're in ain't over yet. Bring on a musical chorus. Hell yeah! Rock concert lights that can strobe and scroll. I'll make a musical for us if you're featured in the starring role. So though I sing off key, if you are here with me, I'm living musically, there's music everywhere. You taught my heart to sing, and while I'm warbling, I'm loving everything. There's music everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Life can be sequins and glitter. We'll find the glamour in the mundane, 'cause there's no need to be bitter when you've got your own unique refrain. I found my part to play and gave my heart away. You showed me if I stay, there's music everywhere. Such lovely harmonies. Somebody pitch me, please. I'm belting straight high C's. There's music everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Symphonies playing, clearly conveying that it's time to sing your part. Melodies soaring, orchestras roaring, and you'll hear it if you open up your heart. There's music all around, just listen for be heard. And once your heart is stirred, you'll belt out every word. There's music everywhere. It's 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 everywhere. Our lives, they all contain a clear melodic strain. So grab your hat and cane, there's music everywhere. Go on and find your song, it's playing soft but strong. If you just sing along, there's music everywhere. It's everywhere, it's everywhere, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, it's everywhere, everywhere. It's everywhere, it's everywhere.
The button on that, like, I could see what you mean when you say that everybody was like full out,
Yeah.
and and then for it to be like drum roll
Yes.
and cymbal crash,
Yes.
it is such a like classic musical theater, with the exception of the the old trope that everybody gets married at the end of a comedy, although they do end up, sorry, spoiler alert, I already say this in the intro, like the love happens. And it is, I feel like you go out singing and dancing.
Hopefully,
That was
that's the idea.
definitely the intention. I will say we had a very long conversation about which beat the confetti cannon sprayed on. Like it was a contentious moment because I was like, no, it has to be on this moment.
Which moment?
Okay, so I wanted it. Here's what I was like. I think it needs to be like before the button of the show, so that like the confetti cannons happen, and then the last moment you see before the blackout is the confetti coming down. So that like the last moment is this beautiful like glittering thing. But there are other people who wanted it to be on the last moment. But I was like, then the confetti's not going to be down in time.
Well, it depends when you do the blackout, right?
Exactly.
Like, do you do the blackout immediately on the button?
Exactly.
And if so, then you waste the confetti.
Yeah.
But maybe you just hold for another beat.
Yes.
What did you end up doing?
We ended up doing it my way because I was like, I don't know why, but I was like, I, as the writer, need this confetti cannon to happen on beat 3 of measure 277. I forget whatever it was,
Yeah.
but like I was just like, please trust me on this.
That's hilarious. Did you have an opinion on it?
I don't recall. I believe I was on the same page with Michael as that we wanted to see the confetti. I mean, these are the kinds of really important questions you
Yeah.
get into in production. Is what beat can confetti cannons fire on? It's really so it makes musical theater fun. It's so collaborative, and there's so many different people who are all thinking about different things or thinking about the same thing but in different ways and through different lenses. And that collaboration is what really makes it thrilling.
Is that ultimately a writer's decision to make, or if the director had been like, you're in my theater, you hired me to do this, and I say confetti cannons on the button, would they get authority? Because I know playwrights have a lot of leeway and like casting and stuff.
It's such a good question. I honestly think probably that decision should have been the director's decision, but like because it was timed to music, I don't like to like step my foot into a lot because I feel like the coolest part of theater is the collaboration, and I'm gonna let the director do their thing. I'm gonna let the choreographer do their thing, but every now and then I think we can make our work better by helping each other out a little bit.
Right, you choose your battles.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I guess there is a point where if two people have really contrary opinions, there's got to be rules written somewhere about who gets to what's the word, like
win.
Who gets final
approval? Who gets to I don't know. Overstep isn't the right word, but like there has to be sort of a power dynamic, and I don't need you to give me the answer to that. I just find it curious.
I think you could have a really interesting entire show all about those kinds of issues, because a lot of times there aren't necessarily written rules about who gets final say on everything. It gets very messy.
Can you
there's
imagine
a lot
them
of
being
gray
like,
area.
you know what? We can't agree on this. We're just pulling the show.
Yeah.
Guess you have, what do they say? You have to pick something you have to die on, what cross you want to die on, or something like that. Let's talk about the future of the show. Is it licensed? Can people get the rights to do this in their local theater? Are you working on bringing it off Broadway? what's happening? Where are we going to see Howard Barnes wake up next?
We are in the process of licensing it right now. We just released it like 2 weeks ago, and we're also, we're having some conversations with the next step. We're hoping to do like another regional theater, just to hone it in a little bit more. The more you can sort of work on it with an audience, the better you can sort of, cut the fat and tone the jokes in a little bit more. So we're hoping to have one more step. And then, we'll see what happens. We have high hopes for it, but we're super excited to release this album, and we just wanted to give people another sort of flavor of what we do, because we have we just finished 3 seasons of this show called Vampirina on Disney, and so we have a lot of children's songs. We did an album about 10 years ago that had a bunch of cabaret songs, but we didn't have like a full length adult musical out. So part of it was just like, okay, we have the time, we have the ability to like do this right now. Let's release this and let's get this out there. And then we're working on, a bunch of other projects right now in a bunch of different stages. But yeah, we're hoping to have some next steps to announce shortly.
Got it. That feels like a very prepared statement.
I did not prepare.
It's totally off the cuff.
Totally off the cuff.
Well, so listen. Let's say that someone who runs a regional theater loves this album, and they're like, "That would be perfect for us." What do they do next?
Totally. Well, feel free to contact us at Kooman Dimond Music. Oh, wait, what is our?
Do you have a website?
We have a website.
KoomanDimond.com.
Okay.
KoomanDimond.com. Yeah.
And then stay tuned for licensing. So if it's like a school that wants to do it, they're going to have to wait, or should they reach out on their?
They should reach out too. I think we're pretty open. The cool thing about like theater these days is that like you can sort of license a show and it doesn't affect like any kind of first class production of it. Like you can license it to schools, and it's not like someone's going to like not see it in New York because a school in Illinois is
No,
doing
I think
it,
it's more likely that they're going to fall in love with it at the school. I mean, we all saw what happened with Be More Chill.
Exactly.
And Be More Chill was licensed before it was on Broadway, and there were simultaneous productions going on. I mean, I think that there are exceptions to that, and that's why you have somebody to license it. But I'm glad to hear that this is available, at least in theory, for productions of any and all sizes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
cool. I close every show by talking about a charity or a nonprofit that's important to the artists. I like to say that there's no excuse for having a public platform if you're not using it to make the world a better place. And you have brought to me today an organization that I'm very familiar with, and I'm thrilled to be talking about. Rosie's Theater Kids.
Totally. I'm quite biased because one of my first jobs in the city was playing piano for Rosie's Theater Kids. So every like Tuesday and Wednesday I went into public schools and taught 5th graders how to sing and dance, and we did these musical theater cabarets. And a lot of these schools were I think it was like 60% underprivileged kids. So it was so awesome to teach these kids how to sing and dance, bring musical theater to these kids who would never have any exposure to it. We brought all of the kids to a Broadway show. And then the cool thing about Rosie's is that like they select a bunch of kids to continue that work, continue that education for free. All for free to these kids throughout high school. And then they help them get into colleges. They help them get into charter high schools in New York City. It is such a great program, and I know intimately everyone there, and they're such good people. They do such great work. I just love this organization.
They also have a strong focus on academics, which I love, that you're not just going, if you're a kid who's going to Rosie's, you don't just go learn to sing and dance. You like spend your time doing your homework there, and they've got tutoring, and it is a long-term program. It's not a like 2-week camp. It's a 4-year program. And they also send their kids to see Broadway shows.
Yes.
Like 1,200 some students a year.
Yeah.
And they teach classes in the schools in addition to their signature space. I'm going to make a donation to Rosie's Theater Kids today in honor of Kooman and Dimond and the work that you guys are doing. And I'm going to encourage my audience to do the same, because I really believe that even if we each only have a couple of dollars to donate, if enough of us do it, it'll make a big difference. And of course, every dollar counts.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Totally.
I can't wait to see what happens next with The Noteworthy Life of Howard Barnes. I feel like I want to bring, like when it's available at a theater near me, I want to bring all my friends who love musical theater and all my friends who hate musical theater, because I feel like it's the rare show that does enough making fun of the art form that people that think that they hate it will be like, yeah, totally. That's so formulaic, or like, that's so annoying. And you guys take those things and make them enjoyable, because, you know, usually we say, I'm not laughing at them, I'm laughing with them. In this case, you are kind of laughing at how ridiculous musical theater can be, while simultaneously making this love letter. And so people who want to laugh at it get their chance to laugh at it, and people who want to laugh with it get their chance to laugh with it, and everybody goes out with a smile on their face and maybe having learned something.
Totally.
What more could you ask for? My favorite thing, of course, is all the inside jokes. And so I'm going to take us out by playing another song from the show called Original Musical. And I got to say, congratulations on the lyricism of this in particular. I mean, the music is great too, but the lyricism of this is like the smartest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, thank you. That's too kind of you to say. It was a lot of fun to work on.
Well, it's been a lot of fun having you here today. Here's a bit of Original Musical. Thanks for listening to Laura Heywood Interviews.
What kind of musical is it?
Does it matter?
Of course it matters. If we could figure out what kind of musical you're in, we could find a way out.
Where do we start?
At the very beginning.
Sounds like a very good place to begin.
Does the score sound like a contemporary Broadway show?
I have no earthly idea.
Is it mostly just piano and guitar?
I haven't really been paying attention.
Is it set here in the present, or is it sometime long ago?
It's present day.
Are you in Siam or somewhere else that's just as far?
No, it's here and now.
Then we're finally getting somewhere, because now we know that you're in a contemporary musical. Do you feel an affinity for any of the following? Witches who are greenish,
No.
girls you might call meanish,
No.
adolescent losers in a county spelling bee,
No.
Mormons on their missions,
No.
rapping politicians,
No.
blondes who woo their boyfriends by pursuing a degree,
No.
pregnant pastry bakers,
No.
geekified food bakers,
No.
angsty German dramas,
No.
disco loving mamas,
No.
nannies with umbrellas,
No.
several Cinderellas,
No.
stylish bohemians who all have HIV.
People write musicals about that?
It won the Pulitzer.
Look, we've been at this for hours. I really don't think that we're gonna...
Howard, we just eliminated the entire musical theater canon, which means you must be in a new musical.
Is that bad?
Only if you want anybody to see it.
So...
Oh, no.